This video is now in session, and why are we talking about the Brazilian election? The Brazilian election, the general election, which elects its president, happens in 1 year. And 1 year, by all means, is not that much time, but it's in Brazil, which, partisan satire, we normally don't really cover politics outside of the US. And then we do also sometimes talk about the United Kingdom and Israel. But we're talking about the Brazilian general election today because of the interestingness of this race. This is the race to re-elect Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro is currently the right-wing president of Brazil, and he was in presidency since 2019. But the interesting part of this race is not Bolsonaro or his very bad COVID handling, but rather it pertains to the opposition to Bolsonaro. So, in terms of opposition candidates, we have a very long list here, but there's only one word that really matters from this list, and that word comes from the Workers' Party. It comes from Inacio Lula de Silva, Luiz Inacio. Lula de Silva, but his nickname is practically Lula. Now, Lula is part of the Workers' Party of Brazil, and he is a populist. He's a populist, somewhat similar to how Bolsonaro is currently, which is also a populist. But the important part about him is he was the president of Brazil since 2003 until 2011. So we see here that he was president, he was elected here, and he was one of the first left-wing presidents in Brazil's history for several decades. For several decades before Lula, Brazil had been always right-wing, or at least right-leaning. But with Lula's presidency, it went for the left, and the Workers' Party thrived under Lula's presidency. He was very popular, and he still is very popular with Brazilian citizens, and he's shown that he's able to help Brazilians go out of poverty. He was able to give welfare benefits to those who were poor, and closing the gap for the wealth inequality in Brazil. Obviously, it's still very high, but that was what Lula was able to do in his presidency. Now, that all ended through Operation Car Wash. Operation Car Wash is something that happened very long ago. Maybe not. It ended February 1st, 2021. But Operation Car Wash started in 2014 based on the investigations of money laundering, where the police wanted to see any kind of money laundering situation was going on. And they were able to uncover a lot of things, and it all traced back to Petrobras, a oil company that was a very big oil company in Brazil, and the leader of Petrobras. Now, the leader of Petrobras was found to be bribing individuals money in order for certain services, and investigators found a few cases where Petrobras's executive asked or donated money to Lula's campaign in exchange for political favors, and Lula was in on this. So as a result, Lula was tried and he was prosecuted by the Brazilian courts, and thus he was put into jail, and his sentence time was around 12 years and 1 month by the end of it all. But in 2021, a federal judge ruled that the prosecutors were not going to the right place. That the federal courts that managed the case of Lula did not have jurisdiction over the case, and as a result, the charges should not really apply to the federal courts. Now, this doesn't mean that Lula is completely safe. The prosecution could go to the Brazilian courts, or not the Brazilian courts, the Brasilia courts, so like the courts in Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil, and charge Lula there. But as of now, Lula does not have any criminal charges, and that's important because one of the main reasons why Lula is still talked about very often is if we go back to the 2018 election where Bolsonaro was first elected. Before Bolsonaro was elected, Lula was pondering on an idea of running for the 2018 Brazilian general election, and he was actually a real contender. If we look at Lula, if they have Lula, it's the Workers' Party. You can see that originally Lula dominated in the polls. You can see it's, I believe it's this right then there, but Lula dominated in the polls because he was very popular among Brazilians. He helped Brazilians get out of poverty, and thus they supported him. But because he went to jail and because he was running from his jail cell, a lot of people were asking whether or not Lula actually had the rights to run for presidency. And Brazil's courts clarified this, saying that Brazil and Lula could not run for election because he was convicted and was in jail at the time. So, thus, Lula was ineligible to run for re-election, and that's how Bolsonaro was able to win with 46.03% of the vote. But if Lula ran in the 2018 election, he very well could have ended up in the same place as he did in the 2006 election, where he won by 60.83%, or in the 2002 election when he won by 61.27%. Now we can see the same thing happening again in 2022. Now, he's only a potential candidate for the Workers' Party. He hasn't stated that he would actually run, and most candidates have not stated that they'd actually run, but it's certainly a possibility, and the Workers' Party will definitely try to get Lula to run for re-election because he's an immensely popular candidate. That's why he's always called a populist. He's able to lead a group of voters who are more of the poorer class. And it comes at a good time for Lula because of Bolsonaro's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. You can see here that Bolsonaro has really not gotten or clamping down on the virus at all ever since it started spreading in June. You can see that there was a dip here in October and November, but that went back up, and now it is at 88,000 cases as of June 10th. Yes, this is a pre-recorded video. If you watched my recent video on the New York Times games, on guessing if a neighborhood voted for Trump or Biden, then you'll know that this is a pre-recorded video. But anyway, as of June 10th, there were 58,214 cases, and in total, all time, there were a total of 17,210,969 cases, meaning that out of 100,000 people in Brazil, 8,155 had the virus at some given point. And that's really bad for compared to all the other nations. And overall in the Southern America, the virus has been really bad in the region, but in Brazil it has been just as bad as in nations like Chile or even Paraguay. So Bolsonaro is not really on his way to getting to a good point. In terms of vaccination, only 11% of the population has been fully vaccinated, and only 24% have been vaccinated with one dose. And if we track the vaccine progress that's happening around the world, there are a lot of other states that are doing better than Brazil. And if we look at the vaccine that Brazil is using, if we can find it, Brazil is partly using Chinese vaccines, and that by itself doesn't really matter a lot, the fact that it comes from China. But what does matter about it is the efficacy rate of those vaccines. If we go to the authorized vaccines and go to the Sinovac vaccine, if we keep scrolling down, then you'll see that some of these have been implemented in Brazil. Not the Johnson & Johnson. I keep scrolling down because I'm trying to find Sinovac. You can see here that the Sinovac vaccine was approved for emergency use in Brazil. And that's important because the Sinovac vaccine is not particularly effective at going against a lot of variants, let alone I guess let alone the original vaccine, the original virus. The original virus is pretty good at 91.25%. But if we look at this case here in Brazil, the efficacy against COVID-19 with or without symptoms was 50%, exactly 50%, and you need 50% in order to get a vaccine approved. And you can see here that it's just above that mark with 50.65%, 50.65% chance of actually protecting yourself against the vaccine. And that while that's better than 0%, it's still very bad for COVID-19, especially with all the variants that are starting to spread. So that's a worrying sign for Brazil. Now, at least Brazil does have other vaccines besides the Sinovac vaccine. It has the Johnson & Johnson, as we stated right here, which has pretty high efficacy rates, 68%. It's not completely that high, but it is better than the Sinovac. And then if we look here at the Oxford AstraZeneca, it's a 76% approval. And and finally, we also have this one, the Pfizer vaccine, which has a 91.3% efficacy rate. And so it's not like Brazil is completely reliant on the Sinovac vaccine, but the thing is their vaccination campaign, it's pretty substandard, and there's also there's also the question of rising crime in Brazil. Brazil's crime has been rising for the longest of time, and it continues to rise under Bolsonaro's presidency. So these kinds of issues that have plagued Brazil for decades are continued to be promulgated by the Bolsonaro presidency, and it doesn't seem like there's any end in sight, which gives a great opening for former President Lula, where if he runs, he could actually easily win the presidential election, because he's shown that he can withstand any corruption charges. He's shown that he can withstand scandals like the corruption charge against him and the bribery charge that was placed against him by the Brazilian prosecutors. And with that, and even though he has had those charges, he still enjoys very high ratings. You can see here that for the preliminary round, we can see that Lula holds a lead over Bolsonaro with a 10% lead here in this Instituto Mapa poll. And then here we see in this Vox Populi poll, I apologize if I'm butchering the names, but he has a 19% lead in this poll with 43% of the vote. And if we go to the second round, if they do have second round polls, you can see that his lead only expands to 27, 33%, 42%, 23%, 20%, 36%. And that has been growing ever since February, when his charges were expunged. You can see he started to lead here, and then he led more, and now he's leading more and more. So it seems like that Bolsonaro's presidency might be limited to just one term because of President Lula, and that's mainly his fault. He didn't handle COVID-19 correctly, and all the problems that was in Brazil before he was president are still in Brazil when he was in presidency, or when he is in his current presidency. So it makes it very easy for Lula to come in and say to Brazilians that he's going to bring a new direction away from the COVID-19 pandemic and reducing the poverty that he had been doing in his previous presidency. And that would give him the presidency. But it's really, at this point, a race of populism. Which kind of populist can win? And it seems as if this moment that the Lula populism movement is likely to win. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. This video is now adjourned, and I'll see you in the next one.